This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.
Hey, welcome back. Jonathan Clark. We're in the studio with Robbie Robertson. He is a member, of course, of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He has a new album out, which we're going to hold up here. Cinematic, spelled with an S. And there's also a deluxe edition of the album, which comes with vinyl and CD and a hardcover book with artwork created for each song. And a new film, too, Once We're Brothers, Robbie Robertson and the band, based on his memoir, which I have, too, which is fantastic read, Testimony. And he has done the soundtrack for the new Martin Scorsese film, The Irishman, his 10th movie with Scorsese that he has scored. First question, and I asked this of Kiefer Sutherland, who was in here last week. Have you been watching country music on PBS yet?
I've seen a bit of it. I've been really busy, so I haven't had a chance to really lock in yet. But I am curious about it.
Yeah, Ken Burns is a master storyteller. I highly recommend it. Also, there's this video you did for The Wait. This was for Playing for a Change, an organization devoted to connecting people all around the world, literally all around the world, through music. This is so amazing. It's The Wait. It's performed by you, Ringo, Lucas Nelson, Marcus King, other world-class musicians around the world, with your son, Sebastian, producing, I think, right?
Yeah, Sebastian. It was his idea, and he told me about it, and I thought, I guess, if you think it's a good idea, I think it's a good idea. And then he knows the people from Playing for Change, Mark Johnson, who's the head of it, and they started putting these pieces together. And they asked me to do a thing, and I did it, and then Ringo did it, and then all of these people all over the world.
World-class musicians.
Oh, my God, amazing musicians. And it has turned out, it's a phenomenon. It's so extraordinary, and people all the time are commenting on this to me. So good for him. Good for Sebastian.
Well, Google it. It's called The Wait. Obviously, we know the song, and it's Playing for a Change, playing for a change. So Google that. Look at the video. It's amazing. You're in L.A. playing the song, and the crew recorded and shot everyone else in various locations around the world, and they synced it up like perfectly. And that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, I don't know how they did it, like the production. You know, the instruments, they're playing in a desert, in a forest, you're on the terrace. So good.
They know what they're doing. So, I'm so happy with the outcome of it.
The influences for this new album coming partly from the films you've done with Mr. Scorsese over the years, as well as your life in the band, the writing of your memoir, and the new film from that book. So everything sort of came together sort of to influence the songs on this album?
I've never had an experience like this before, that I was making a record, I was working on scoring the movie The Irishman and figuring out songs for it as well, and they were making this documentary based on my book, like you were saying, that's called Once We're Brothers, and it premiered, it opened the Toronto International Film Festival. And the reception was extraordinary. The movie is very moving, and the reaction was very moving too. And that's coming out. Magnolia Films is releasing that probably just after the first of the year, and then it'll stream after that. But anyway, this documentary that really, really, reflects on the brotherhood of the band is so well done. And then I went the other night to the premiere of The Irishman at the opening of the New York Film Festival. And wow, what a movie. And I know the movie, but seeing everything done, everything finished in the film, and how it all works together, there's never been anything like this before.
And hearing your score, I mean, let's not forget the score is, your music is in the film. 3.5 hours, I read the film is like 3.5 hours or something.
It's nothing.
It goes by like that, right?
It's because it takes place over many decades, that it has to be that for the story to unfold and that you really understand what's going on. But because it's a Netflix film, on Netflix, they don't care if it's 3 hours or 6 hours. It's just if the journey is worth it. And boy, this movie, I've told Marty, I've never seen a movie like this before, and that's something to say.
Yeah, well, you've worked on him a lot with him over the years, and I read that he tells you one thing: Robbie, do the score, just make sure it doesn't sound like film music.
Well, it's because of what we have done over all these years. It's not traditional movie music. It is a different thing, and Marty is, a complete admirer, and so am I, of great movie music. But he will quickly say, I don't know how to do that. I don't know, because his movies, you can't go ba-ba-da-boom, in his
Right.
movies. There's nobody flying through the air or jumping from building to building. It's not that kind of an experience.
I immediately think of John Williams as you describe film music.
Yeah.
For all the Spielberg films, right?
Yeah, he's remarkable. All those guys are so wonderful, but it's a different animal with Marty. And what I do, I'm certainly not traditional in any of this. I don't even read or write music, so it's got to be something different.
When you do the score, though, it's got to be a lot different than you sort of writing a song with someone for an album that you're going to do. I'm assuming you have monitors in the studio where you're watching clips as you sort of compose, right? Is that how it work?
I have, I look at footage and I try to find something that connects with that. And I also try to find something without following that precisely. I try to find something that's just even sometimes counterpoint, that isn't on the nose. It isn't trying to be what's in the movie, that it does something else to you besides. So we're trying to avoid the obvious.
Yeah. Robbie Robertson is with us. I want to talk about this new album. There's an instrumental track on this album called Remembrance that also has two more incredible guitarists on it, Derek Trucks and Doyle Bramhall II. What was it like working with those guys?
They're incredible. Derek is probably the best slide player there is. Doyle, he has such a beautiful touch. I mean, so when I wrote this track, I was doing it. My friend Paul Allen had just passed away,
Yeah.
and his favorite guitar players were Derek, Doyle, and me. So we did this as a remembrance to Paul, and then Marty heard it and said, I want to use this at the end of the movie. So it's in the movie. And there's even a little bit of I Hear You Paint Houses, the track that I did with Van Morrison on the album.
Yeah. Now tell us what I Hear You Paint Houses actually means.
I Hear You Paint Houses is kind of a mob term, and it's about hiring a hitman. And it's not a pretty thing to write about or discuss, but paint houses refers to the splattering of blood, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Robbie Robertson is with us. The new album is cinematic. Of course, the film Once We're Brothers coming out soon. Look for that. And he's done the score for the new Martin Scorsese film, The Irishman. And I want to ask some more about the songs, specifically the song on the album Once We're Brothers. Is that inspired by this film, or did you write that before the documentary on the band, or?
They were making the documentary, and because this was floating around that period, and like you said, that it was inspired by my book, Testimony, I just sat down one day, and I was missing Rick, Richard, and Levon. I was missing my brothers that have passed away. And I wrote a song, and it was very reflective of that. When the people heard this song that were making the documentary, they not only said, we've got to use this in the movie, but we want to call the movie Once We're Brothers. And all of these pieces, the way they fit together, that ends up feeling really good, that things are connecting in a magical way. So it just fit in a way that you couldn't have planned it any better. And so anyway, I'm just thrilled with the way that that's worked out, and the way the things in Irishman has worked out, and all of this has made this record cinematic, above and beyond anything that I've ever done before.
Well, it sounds great on the radio, and we're going to play a track off it really soon here. Do you keep in touch with Garth at all these days? Do you check in?
Well, Garth is, he's a very, he stays in his own world, and which he always has, and I respect that. He's not much for hanging out, you know what I mean? So anyway, every once in a while we check in, we say, Garth, what's going on? And he's like, everything's good. All right, see you later,
Yeah.
So anyway, I love Garth, and he is probably the most unique keyboard player in the history of rock and roll. I mean, many people have said this over the years, and I couldn't agree more.
And we had John Simon up here talking about his recent book. Fantastic stories, obviously, of the early days, recording the first couple of band albums. Speaking of which, the self-titled band, The Band album, that's coming out in a reissue, right? It's being remastered. What's going on with that?
We have put together the 50th anniversary collection of this, and Bob Clearmountain and I got the original tapes, and we knew not to tamper with this. But what we were able to do is to very, very much be loyal to the original, but make it so we didn't have the limitations of technology back in 1969. And now you can get closer to the music, and it can feel like it's wrapping all around you more. And just in technology, there's like less hiss and all of that stuff. And and it was very delicate what we were doing. We were extremely cautious, and I'm so satisfied with what we were able to do in this, of just making it just a little bit better.
Yeah.
And a little bit better. And I know this music as good as anybody in the world. So I know when you're getting in the way, and I know when you're just doing something that just makes it a little bit more hearable.
When you get those tapes, I'm assuming you get the master tapes and you put it on a 2-inch machine. Like, do you have to be careful with it's what is it, 50? I mean, it's 50 years old, right? I mean, these tapes. You have to be careful, or is it in good shape?
No, what you do is you very cautiously transfer it. So the tapes are safe.
Yeah.
You transfer it and you work off that, so you don't have to be playing the tapes over and over again and damaging the original.
Exactly.
So we did, besides actually mixing over again the original tapes, then we found these outtakes, stuff that I barely remembered.
Wow.
And they are fantastic. Some of them were such a thrill for me to come back to. And then we've included in the package the original set of the band at Woodstock, which has never been released before. And that is an experience too, because it brought me right back to when we played Woodstock. I think we'd only played one other job as the band before that, playing this new music of ours. And now we're playing in front of 500,000 people. And
no pressure.
We played on the last night of the festival, I think at 9 o'clock or something. We went out and everybody was, they were ramped up. They were muddy, jumping up and down. They wanted to rock. And when we went out there, it was like playing hymns. And a thing came over that audience just to see the whole mood transform into this almost spiritual event. And it was quite beautiful, actually. And everybody just went into that zone and went with this music. And so when I revisited these tapes, that just came back to me. We played our set, we left, and everybody went back, and they started jumping in the air again and putting more mud all over the place. And it was a historic event.
Yeah.
It wasn't just another gig or anything like that. There had been nothing like that in the world before. And Woodstock became, where we lived, that became the most famous small town in the world.
It sure did. So when you heard that tape of your set at Woodstock, how did it sound? Did it sound good? Did you have to do a lot of work on it, or?
No, we did no work on it. It's the original mix from the original concert, and we just left it as is. It felt like, you know what? Some things you just don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Just let it be as honest as you can.
I read that there will be a Last Waltz tour with Don Was, Warren Haynes, and many others involved. And you're sort of behind that, right? You're sort of involved in that, aren't you?
I'm just thrilled that this legacy is carrying on this way, and people of this caliber that are so good at what they're doing, and there's many other people that are part of this too. And so they're doing this tour, and it's a tribute to the Last Waltz. So I'm saluting this, and I'm just completely honored that they want to do this. And I'm hopefully, I'm going to join up with them at some point.
Well,
in
we
this.
look forward to that. And whenever someone tells me that they've never seen The Last Waltz, I say, well, you've got to see it because it's maybe the best concert film ever made. And I'm sure you've heard that before, right? A lot of people...
maybe once or twice, yeah.
Robbie Robertson is with us. His new album is cinematic. And, of course, the new film, too, Once Were Brothers, Robbie Robertson and the band. And, of course, he has done the score for the new Martin Scorsese film, The Irishman. And there was a time quite a few years ago that you found yourself in the city of Boston in a studio with none other than the late Rick Ocasek. Tell us that story.
Oh, yeah. No, I was putting together the music for the King of Comedy. And I was in New York, and I was meeting with David Byrne, and we were talking about a track, and they gave me a track to see if it will work in the movie. And while I was hanging out there, I got a message from Rick. He said, "Why don't you come up to my place in Boston? I'll play you some music, and if there's anything that you want to use." So I went there, and I stayed at his house, and in his home studio, he played me the original version of Drive.
Wow.
That he had written, and it was him performing it. He played me that, and he played me another song, too, called Steal the Night, and that was cool, too. So because of the movie and what would work and what wouldn't fit as well, we ended up putting "Steal the Night" on the soundtrack, and it's used in subtly in the movie. But anyway, it was great meeting with Rick, and he was such a special talent, such a particular kind of songwriter too. And when I realized that all the more when I went to his house and sat in there and he was playing me music, I thought, wow, this guy, he comes from his own place in what he does. And so I've always had a lot of respect for him and the group, the Cars.
And I saw an episode of Shangri-La on Showtime with you and Rick Rubin walking around the Shangri-La studio in Malibu.
Well, that was my studio.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Because I'm the one that turned that place into a recording studio years ago for the band.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of great music there, and so did a lot of other people too. And when Rick Rubin decided to take it over, he has been so loyal to the originality of the place, yet taking it to such a better level. The whole compound there of buildings and everything. This was such a strange place because of the stories that went with it. They used to film the TV show Mr. Ed there, and the horse lived there on that property. Now, before that, this ranch house was a bordello for cowboys, because out in Malibu at that particular time, this part of Malibu, it was all ranches and horse guys,
Yeah.
So they were like, well, we got to accommodate everybody around here. And when they said this place was a bordello, I said, we'll take it.
Oh, of course. I want to play Let Love Rain from the new album Cinematic, which we've been playing on this show a lot. What more can you tell us about this song?
When I was making this record and I was trying to find a balance between some of these songs, the stories that have edgy backgrounds to them, like I Hear You Paint Houses, and then, the thing of Once We're Brothers, that it's kind of sad and hopefully beautiful at the same time. And one day, in Los Angeles, I was driving in my car, and they played the Beatles song, All You Need Is Love. And there is something musically in that track that it's in music what we call it breaks meter, and it's just a different time figure in it. And that, to me, was what made it different. But what really came back to me was this thing of John Lennon really being such an advocate for peace and for love, and then years later they said, well, that came and went and stuff like that. And in these times that we're living in right now, it just made me think, you know what? He was right. That's the good part of life. That's what we long for. That's what we really, really need. And I wrote this song with John in the back of my mind. And I even mention him up towards the end of the song. I couldn't help it. And I don't know, it's just that same message, but it's one of the truest messages of all, of Let Love Rain.
His name is Robbie Robertson. Everyone go out and get this fantastic new album, Cinematic. While you're at it, check out the book, Testimony, and, of course, check out The Irishman, coming out very soon. When does that come out, like in a week or so or something?
The Irishman goes into theaters the beginning of November, and then it streams on Netflix at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and then let's not forget Once We're Brothers, too, the documentary about the band. Robbie, thank you so much for all the fans. Thank you for all the music over the years and everything you're doing.
Jonathan, this was a pleasure. Thank you.
This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.